Welcome to the Sunken Ledger. Here, we chart the ocean's darkest tales of lost souls, cursed ships, and ancient legends. Tonight, we drift along the shadowed waters of the River Thames to unearth one of the most haunting tragedies ever to stain its dark current, the sinking of the Princess Alice. The evening of September 3rd, 1878, was calm and warm, a night that promised gentle breezes and laughter on the water. The Princess Alice, a wooden paddle steamer, carried over 700 souls, families returning from holiday, couples walking hand in hand, children wide-eyed with wonder at the lights of London. The river sparkled in the setting sun, and music drifted from the decks, an orchestra playing softly as the steamer glided past the busy docks and quiet coves. But as twilight deepened, the gentle surface of the Thames masked a brewing disaster. A larger ship, the Bywell Castle, steamed steadily upstream, her iron bow slicing through the murky water. She was a collier, built for strength and burdened with coal dust and smoke. Her captain believed he had the right of way, the river's currents guiding his heavy vessel through the winding channels. The river was crowded that night. Barges and ferries jostled for space in the fading light, their whistles echoing in the misty air. Amid this confusion, the Princess Alice and the Bywell Castle drew closer, two ships locked on a fatal course. Passengers on deck watched with curiosity as the dark shape of the collier grew larger, her running lights flickering through the growing fog. At 8:50 p.m., the two ships collided. The Bywell Castle's iron bow drove deep into the side of the Princess Alice, tearing her open like a fragile shell. In an instant, the night was filled with the sickening shriek of splintering wood and the screams of passengers flung from the deck. The steamer split almost in two, her lights flickering and then winking out as cold water rushed in. The river was no gentle mistress that night. The Thames had long been a sewer for London, a foul, poisonous tide of raw sewage, chemicals, and waste that choked the lungs and burned the skin. As the passengers of the Princess Alice plunged into the water, they found themselves not just drowning, but suffocating in a noxious soup that offered no mercy. Chaos reigned on the decks. Mothers clutched their children. Fathers tried in vain to fight the river's pull. Some passengers managed to cling to floating wreckage, their eyes wide with terror as they called out for loved ones they could no longer see. Others slipped beneath the black water without a sound, the weight of their sodden clothes dragging them down to the silty bottom. The Bywell Castle's crew threw ropes and lifebuoys into the swirling darkness, but the river claimed its victims quickly. In the confusion, it was nearly impossible to tell who was still alive, who had vanished below the oily surface. Boats arrived from the shore, but for most, help came too late. The darkness of the river hid the true horror of that night until dawn's pale light revealed a scene of unspeakable loss. When the final count was made, over 650 lives had been lost, men, women, and children who had set out that evening in search of simple joys. Their bodies were pulled from the river for days after, the newspapers printing list upon list of the missing and the dead. The tragedy forced London to finally reckon with the filth of its river, a tidal graveyard that had taken so many. Yet the river itself seemed untouched by the horror. The tide rose and fell as it always had, washing the broken wreck of the Princess Alice further downstream, her wooden ribs jutting from the water like the bones of some ancient leviathan. Divers who ventured down to the wreck spoke of an eerie stillness, a final haunted silence in the sunken remains of the pleasure steamer. In the years that followed, whispers grew along the banks of the Thames. Riverboat captains spoke of ghostly figures drifting in the morning mist, pale faces and hollow eyes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Fishermen claimed to hear distant music on still nights, a phantom echo of the orchestra that played its last song aboard the doomed steamer. The sinking of the Princess Alice remains one of the most chilling chapters in the dark history of the Thames. A night when laughter and music turned to terror and silence. A night when the river claimed hundreds of souls in its filthy embrace, their stories lost in the swirling currents of a city that could no longer pretend the river was harmless. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true tales from the depths.